Hi there, listener. Welcome in. This is Strange Stories from Odd Folks with an X. This episode's story is titled What Rough Beast? A Terrifying Tale by Lee Hulme. Content warnings for this episode are monstrous beastie, mind control, swearing. Please remember to take good care of yourself. And with that, why don't we begin?
Leaves rustle in the wind, skirting and swooping, flying across the cracked cement of a deserted, abandoned fun fair ground. Most of the stalls are gone. The rides are torn down, rusting stumps of metal sticking out of the ground where they used to be, like rotten teeth in a twisted mouth. Weeds thrust up from the ground, tearing the concrete, winding around what remains, staking their claims in the whispering dark. Where the fairground changed from concrete to grass, a jungle has formed. In the center, reeds replace weeds at the edge of a small lake, empty now. When it rains, black mud churns and worms wriggle deeper into the ground. When the sun shines, the bed fills with dry, malformed grins as the mud hardens and splits. At the edge of the ground, the chain-link fence is rusted, and where the woods outside grow close, it shows gaping holes where teenagers have torn or cut their way through. In this empty place, in what feels like the middle of nowhere, no security guard sleeps at their station, waking occasionally to walk, torch-chasing shadows around the perimeter. Sound seems to work differently here. Instead of carrying, it drops, short and flat and solid. Quiet noises go a little further, small like mice, sneaking through the gaps, but loud sounds seem to clap back in the speaker's face with a sharp crack. The world could end outside of this place, and none within would know. The world could end inside of this place, and none without would know. Below the earth, something opens an enormous eye, the smallest crack, baleful with red fire. Almost. The eye closes, but not back into sleep. Instead, the ancient form, cracked now and stiff, readies for movement. Her time is so close now. Jade, Alfie, Amaya, and Will scrabble their way through the fence, pushing aside dying weeds and grass. Ow! Motherfucker! Amaya swears as the wire slices down their upper arm. The cut isn't deep, and by the time everyone is through, it has almost stopped bleeding. Jade slides an arm around their waist and kisses their cheek. You okay there? Amaya nods. Yeah, just a cut. They swipe their fingers over the seeping blood and dash it away to the ground. From that fence? Alfie stares from the small globules of blood still oozing out, to the rusty fence, and back again. Honey, no, you need to get that disinfected. Have you had a tetanus shot? It's fine, Alfie. I'll disinfect it when I get home. And yes, I had my tetanus shot at school like everyone else. Ah, memories of school. Just what I wanted tonight, Will grumbles. 6 years later, and still it never attained that rosy glow everyone tells you it's supposed to. Nope, it still sucked. I hear that, Amaya agreed. So glad we met at uni. Now, are we celebrating or what? The four of them had met in their very first week of university. Jade had classes with Will and Amaya, and Will had a class with Alfie, and before they knew it, they were in student union together, figuring out how much alcohol they could hold, just like most of the other freshmen, it seemed. They became close. Other friends were made, but the four of them were unshakable, even before they'd started dating. Will and Alfie, the one shy, the other neurotic, danced the slow dance known to queer people the world over. Danger lives here. The wrong person, the wrong flirt, the wrong suggestion. Each knew how these things could end, the good and the bad. And so soon out of the cruelty of high school, the fear was magnified. But they had danced the dance, and at the end of it, they had been together. It took Jade and Amaya longer. Amaya, away from family, away from old friends, had slowly learned to reinvent themselves into a non-binary, gender-fluid, mold-shattering beauty. Jade had been their constant supporter, cheering them on, encouraging their explorations, commiserating with them when others put them down. It had taken a while for Amaya, so busy with their gender fuck and part-time job and uni work, to see the way Jade had begun to look at them. But when they had seen, they acted quickly. Jade was popular with all genders, and rarely without a couple of non-serious dating partners. But when Amaya asked Jade on a date, that wider dating pool was closed immediately. And so the four of them, as couples and as individual friends, found themselves even more inseparable. And now, at the end of their degree, diplomas safely tucked away in packing boxes, ready to move them out of that terrible student housing and on, in their pairs, to new lives, they had decided to steal one last night as a group. And where else to go but the place they had spent the last few years not quite daring a trip to? The fairground, if it had once had a name, it was lost in the annals of mythological history, seemed to have been there forever. Certainly research, done by Jade under the disguise of a history project, seemed to show that nobody ever remembered it being anything other than an abandoned fairground, a capital letter to make it a proper noun always applied without thinking. As far as Jade could ascertain, when the nearby town began to form, the fairground was already there, waiting for them, one might say. Disappearances over the years had been connected to the place, but it was like it had some sort of haze, a way of making people forget it was there, thus saving it from further investigation. There were things about it that disturbed her. There was that veil the locals kept over the place that went even deeper than the haze, almost as if they had entered into a pact of silence so deep even they had forgotten. But a pact requires two sides. Someone or something had to be holding it in place, had to have made it to begin with. When she began asking herself what and how, Jade backed off the topic in a hurry. Going where that led, she thought, could only lead to paranoia and seeing monsters everywhere. She squashed the primal roar that had tried to tell her something, not even suspecting she was obeying the command of the creature as well, and moved on. But a part of her never quite forgot. Sometimes, in her dreams, she saw a huge, dark maw opening underground and swallowing the world. The thing had marked Jade as her own. She had felt the inexperienced hands fumbling through her history, thinking about her. Oh, what bliss to be remembered, even if only so vaguely. What bliss to be able to stretch out and practice abilities that had long lain dormant, to incite fear, to claim not just the bodies of those fools who staved off the edges of her hunger, but the mind of one who would make such a beautiful vessel, so intelligent, so large with possibilities. She was definitely awake now. The pact with the locals kept them safe from her yearly feedings. Every year she would entice a couple of students close enough to reach out and take for herself, and so their lives continued. But the pact itself had an end. All things had an end. And it was she. That dark, buried maw had curled into a smile, and begun preparations. Now came her vessel and 3 others. One would also make a good vessel. She felt him weak and wide open with fear and doubt. Taking him would be no harder than tearing paper. And Jade, oh Jade, the things she had planted in the child's mind just beyond the seeing, the things that would soon erupt into her. She was ready. When they had talked about the fairground before, Jade had described it like the Doctor Who perception filter, where your eyes, and in this case your mind, just slide away from it. But tonight, mildly drunk already, with weed ready to smoke and more alcohol to drink, the fairground is perfect. So they think. A shout from Alfie brings Jade out of her thoughts. Will is climbing an abandoned pile of loose and ancient wood, and Alfie is, as ever, predicting doom. Ignoring him, Will finishes his climb and throws out his arms, beer sloshing from the bottle held in one hand, and declaims to all of them, "This place is amazing! How the fuck is it empty? Surely every drunk-ass graduate wants to come out here tonight?" Jade rolls her eyes. Perception filter, dude. Oh, yeah. Will stumbles on his pile of wood and pinwheels his arms for balance, fighting gravity with every drop of spilled beer. For a moment, it looks like he is going to succeed. Then gravity exerts its grim, undeniable pressure, and he tumbles down the pile, hands scrabbling for purchase, but finding only splinters. He lands at the bottom with a thump, and Alfie is by him in an instant, fretting, petting, cooing. Will, mostly shocked from the thump, raises his hands from the floor and sees the scrapes and wood there, blood mixing with dust and dirt from the pile in the ground. He gives a high-pitched giggle and flaps his hands, blood and wood spraying. Alfie calms him down, producing the mini first aid kit he always carries, and starting to sterilize, clean, and remove splinters with a tiny tool he'd had 3D printed, something like the plastic part of a syringe, minus the needle. It catches the splinter in a vacuum, which can then be used to pull it out. Alfie swears by it, and is putting it to good use on his boyfriend. Will's giggles become hiccups for a few minutes, but once Alfie is done, the both of them standing again, Will motions everyone closer. Amaya, who has started exploring, looks over at Jade, also exploring, and rolls their eyes, but they return. "You all right there?" Amaya asks, letting only a sliver of their annoyance through. Will ignores it and reaches out his hands to Amaya, who takes them stiffly. "Amaya, we've been chosen!" he trills, excited. "We've been what now?" Every part of Amaya is sending out signals for him to stop, but again he ignores them to continue. "Us! We! You and me! Our blood touched the ground first, and she has chosen us!" Jade pulls Will's hands away from Amaya and puts herself half between them before her partner can react with anger. "Will, what the fuck are you talking about?" Will continues to ignore everyone but Amaya. "Can't you hear her? The singing, the screaming, and the one voice that speaks to them all. To us, Amaya. She didn't know which one of us to take at first. Only felt our attention, but you bled first. Your blood touched the ground, and then mine did. So now she knows. We have to go to her." Will, what the actual fuck? Amaya steps around Jade and backs him up until he trips over the same pile of wood and lands on it heavily. The cracking noise the wood makes and the look Amaya directs at Will are enough to scare a small scream from Alfie. Will looks up serenely. "Go ahead, Amaya. If that's what's to be, I accept it. But she will get you, and then we will become a part of her. Oh, she will kill these others too, fuel for her ever-hungry fire. But they weren't chosen like us. They'll never know eternity inside her." Alfie looks at Jade, his face panicked. Splotches of higher color that could be dried blood in the dark mar his pale face. Jade shrugs at him. She has no more clue than he does what's happening. Or does she? A small glimmer in the back of her mind says different. Says lies. Says she just wants them for food, and wants herself and Alfie for something else. But even as she begins to understand, she is frozen in place. Listen with me, Amaya. Will's voice is hypnotic somehow. Even Alfie and Jade feel it, snaking through their minds, sinuous and grasping. They are drawn to the wonders promised, and she slides into their minds, insinuating herself there even as she whispers her lies to the others, to the food. Amaya takes a few shaky breaths, and tears stand in her eyes, as they do in Will's. What do you say, dear friend? Will asks them, so softly the others, still entranced, don't hear. Amaya nods slowly. Yes. Raise her. They leave Jade and Alfie swaying in sync, side to side. Their trance will last until she emerges and implants their remains with her children. Then she will cut them off and see their fear before she establishes herself inside of them, guiding the growth of her young. But for now, they can stay put while she drains the essence of these other two. The world could end outside of this place, and none within would know. The world could end inside of this place, and none without would know. Her time is here now.
Thanks so much for listening. That was What Rough Beast, read by Tracy Clifton and written and edited by Lee Hulme. If you're LGBTQIA2S+, and you'd like to submit a story for use, well, we'd love to hear from you. Check the show notes for a link to do that. Also in the show notes, find info on the music and the sound effects and where else you can find us. We love visitors, so do come and say hi.